Hello, scholars. This is the professor speaking, and I welcome you to Hi, That's Scary, a podcast that utilizes cannabis to analyze horror cinema. The title of today's lecture is How Mental Illness Impacts Human Reactions to Fear, Part 1. Before we begin, I wanted to remind you, scholars, that today is our first day of our new lesson plan. Each film discussed will be broken down into 2 or more parts each week, instead of just one. We're glad to be back. Today we will be discussing 13 Ghosts, a 2001 film that was critically panned, but still managed to turn a profit. The film stars Tony Shalhoub as Arthur, Embeth Davidtz as Kalina, Matthew Lillard as Dennis, and Shannon Elizabeth as Kathy. A number of people contributed to the writing. Rob White is credited for the story. Neil Marshall Stevens and Richard DeVito wrote the screenplay, with Todd Alcott and James Gunn having an uncredited hand in its making. The strain used for this analysis was Pineapple Express in a cartridge. This is a hybrid strain that has effects on feelings of euphoria, happiness, and energy. Let's get to some background about this film. 13 Ghosts was one of the movies that came on TV randomly. I'd been able to catch it a few times, but I don't remember it consistently being available to view. It would be a situation like I saw it at 3 a.m. in the middle of summer when days weren't real, and then again at 1 p.m. on a Monday at some other random point during the year. I think my having some difficulty being able to watch this film made me more interested. A problem this film has that I'm going to mention right off the bat is the same problem I believe everyone has with it. You don't actually spend enough time with the ghosts, and that impacts the scares. The thing we need to keep in mind is that this came out in 2001, when an hour and a half was the standard horror movie time frame, and you generally didn't go over that. We currently get to bask in the glory that is a 2+ hour horror film that have the time to really flesh out their story and characters. The DVD for 13 Ghosts had a special feature section that delved into the backstory of each of the ghosts, which is cool as heck. I really think that if they'd had an extra 20 minutes, this film would have been scarier. In its current form, the thing is that this film is very much a different type of horror. One I appreciate. It has a modern gothic vibe. Some of the ghosts are violent, like the ghosts we're now used to encountering in film, but the other ghosts are relatively harmless and simply exist in the same space as the other characters. Gothic horror does this interesting thing where the way it chooses to scare you is by making you feel sympathy towards most of the characters involved in the situation, and then crushing your heart to pieces. 13 Ghosts does this, with the characters that are alive and eventually the ghosts. Without further ado, let's get scary. We open with an overhead view of a junkyard piled high with cars. A convoy of vehicles are driving through. They eventually stop and people begin to exit. 2 of those people are Dennis and Cyrus. Dennis is psychic and is able to see things through touch. He's very fidgety. His breathing is shallow. He's a bit sweaty, despite it looking cold and damp. He tries to take some pills that were in a pill bottle with a label, so actually prescribed, because in movies, if they care enough to put a label on it, they want you to know a doctor signed off on them things. Cyrus knocks the pills out of his hand, scattering them on the ground. As someone who had to deal with their parents paying out of pocket for a mid-month inhaler in the early 2000s, this hurt my adult wallet and soul. Cyrus tells Dennis he wants him clear-headed, which implies the pills put a damper on his abilities. Cyrus has Dennis touch the ground to try to locate a ghost. When he does, he cries out. With a mix of fear and anger, he questions why Cyrus lied to him about the body count of the ghost. When the ghost was alive, he killed 9 people, so that's the number Cyrus gave Dennis. Post-unaliving, this ghost's kill count went up to 40. Dennis locates the ghost, and Cyrus orders his people to bring out the cube, a metal and glass structure used to contain ghosts. At this point, Dennis touches Cyrus and sees flashes of things that will be shown later in the film. Dennis looks very confused and still very anxious. Some of the other people on Cyrus's team capture Damon and Kalina, 2 ghost rights activists. Damon tells Cyrus that he'll never get the 13th ghost. Cyrus ignores him, but Dennis doesn't. He confronts Cyrus, reminding him that their contract only said 12. Dennis was supposed to be done and get paid after this job. Cyrus basically tells him to suck it up. Because if the pill smacking and body count fudging wasn't enough, we got some contract violations to really drive home the fact that Cyrus is an asshole. Cyrus has his crew release bait to attract the ghost for capture. The bait is an 18-wheeler shooting blood out the sides. The doors to the cube opens and a tape with a Latin incantation begins to play. Attracted by the blood, the ghost comes as requested. He is the Juggernaut, and he's large and bluish and riddled with bullet holes. He takes at least 6 people with him, according to my count, including Damon and presumably Cyrus, as he got a nice hunk of metal lodged into his neck. Spoiler alert though, he's not actually dead. Dennis manages to get out unscathed. We transition to a scene of 2 kids, one small, like 5-ish, the other a teenager, playing in the backyard. They are Kathy and Bobby, children to Arthur and Jean. The film does a bit of a voiceover as the opening credits roll to tell the tale of Arthur and Jean's love, family, and eventually the house fire that kills Jean. The voiceover is done while panning through an empty room before stopping on Arthur's face. He looks like he's numb. Past due notices are pinned to a corkboard. Kathy comes to get Arthur so that he isn't late for work. In the kitchen, Bobby is recording a little radio show. Maggie is the live-in nanny who is a great character but really bad at her job. We'll touch on that later. Arthur gently scolds Kathy for not letting Maggie cook them breakfast, as that's what she's paid for. He eventually trips on Bobby's scooter and gets very angry very quickly. The apartment is small and has 4 people in it. The kitchen / dining / possibly living room is crowded with a large amount of space being taken up by the table. The fire not only took away Jean, it took away their financial security and flexibility to live comfortably. Enter Ben Moss. Ben is / was Cyrus's attorney. He goes to Arthur to tell him that Cyrus has passed, and as he's his only next of kin, being Cyrus's nephew, he is inheriting his estate. Bobby is fascinated by death and grows excited at hearing his uncle was dead. The little radio show he was doing earlier was on rates of different manners of deaths in the area. Ben plays a video for the family of Cyrus telling Arthur that he has left him his house. The family is overjoyed at the thought of being able to live in a bigger place. Ben mistakenly refers to Maggie as Arthur's wife. When he's corrected and Arthur attempts to say what happened to Jean, Bobby tells Ben point blank that his mother, quote, got burned to death in a fire, unquote. And then he doesn't understand why he's getting yelled at, because it's true. And then drive to Cyrus's home. During this time, Ben tells him that Cyrus doesn't have neighbors for miles, and Kalina is seen frantically packing after seeing Cyrus's obituary. When they arrive, Dennis is already at the estate, disguised as a power guy. After some initial pushback from Ben, Dennis talks Arthur into letting him into the house. The house is large and mostly made of ghost impenetrable glass that has etchings on them, which Arthur points out is Latin. Dennis looks very concerned by the composition of Cyrus's house. He obviously recognizes the etchings after working with Cyrus. Dennis excuses himself to the basement. Arthur and Ben go off to fill out paperwork, and Arthur orders Bobby, Kathy, and Maggie to stay in the main room, which they don't listen to and instead go exploring. When Dennis reaches the basement, he is in for a time. He's going down there in search of any money possibly stashed there by Cyrus, as he was never paid. As he walks along, he gets a brief flash of a ghost, which seems to cause him physical pain. He's confused. He doesn't understand why he saw what he saw. He looks around and notices tubing hanging from the ceiling and connecting to a wall. He grows even more concerned, his tone a mix of dread and disappointment as he ponders Cyrus's plans. Dennis eventually falls to the floor again after getting more flashes of ghosts. His reaction to it seems similar to that of a migraine. He pulls out a pair of special glasses that give the wearer the ability to see ghosts. He then looks on and scrambles away in horror as he sees about half of the ghost residing there. The hammer, the torn prince, the pilgrimess, the great child and the dire mother, the angry princess, and the jackal. Dennis runs to find Arthur. While Dennis is in the basement, Arthur and Ben are discussing the estate. Arthur conveys concerns on being able to afford the property taxes, to which Ben reassures that Cyrus took care of it. As Arthur is about to sign, Dennis comes upstairs, calling for Arthur, his voice shaky. Dennis admits who he is and tells Arthur that they need to leave the house immediately. Ben dismisses Dennis and tells Arthur he had been harassing his office looking for money. Dennis angrily confirms that Cyrus owed him money. He continues by saying he was leaving and for Arthur to grab his kids and leave too. This comment makes Arthur's face twitch. Dennis, freaking out to the point of bringing up the safety of his children, has raised a red flag to Arthur. He's starting on the path to see that Dennis might be telling the truth. Arthur didn't object much to Dennis. No, he was listening to him and watching him. Dennis, at this moment, is sweaty like before, with large bags under his eyes, the rims of his lids red and eyes glassy. His voice cracks when he tells Arthur to get his kids out of the house. No matter if a person believes in ghosts or not, Dennis's reaction shows that, to him, it is real, and to him, they are in genuine danger. Dennis continues to get flashes from the ghosts and stumbles before catching his balance on a chair. Arthur goes to help him, and when he touches Dennis, Dennis gets such intense flashes he not only falls to the floor, but starts having a seizure. Arthur, not knowing he's causing the problem, attempts to hold Dennis as he flails. By the end of the assault on Dennis's abilities, he looks awful. He has a deep grimace on his face. His veins are popping out of his forehead. A passing look of despair. Arthur tells Dennis they'd get him help when Dennis is finally able to tell Arthur not to touch him. When he's finally able to get up, he notices Ben is gone. Maggie, Kathy, and Bobby go to different areas of the house during this period. Kathy settles into a plush bedroom and eventually notices a connected bathroom while Bobby rides his scooter around the building. I don't understand why Bobby has his scooter with him and why he was allowed to bring it inside to be used inside the house. This is a glass house. Even if it wasn't, scholars, why is he allowed to ride this thing indoors? Maggie's keeping watch of him at this time, and she shouldn't be letting him ride that thing. She also shouldn't have allowed the kids to leave the room, like Arthur told them to. And Bobby even keeps leaving her, and she just follows him instead of trying to make him stay in one spot. Maggie finds a pair of the special ghost glasses and tries them on first. Bobby first attempts to snatch the glasses before he starts to whine and stomp his foot for them. Maggie hands them over, he takes the glasses, and scooters out the room for Maggie to run after him. Ben has left Arthur and Dennis to go down to the basement. He has his own pair of special glasses, and obviously seems to know the ghosts down there. He knows them so well, and knows how they're imprisoned, so as he walks to his destination, he taunts them. Specifically, he sexually harasses the angry princess, who is naked and covered in self-inflicted cuts, commenting on her chest. I want to make note that while not discussed in the film, the angry princess killed herself due to body dysmorphia, so Ben's comment is extra shitty and disgusting. Ben opens a passageway to a room with a spinning contraption in it. He picks up a suitcase filled with money and doesn't realize he's started a chain reaction. The house begins to move. Glass walls start to shift from their original positions. The outside windows are being sealed over with metal. Ben tries to leave with his money and notices the movement of the walls. He stops, startled, as he watches the wall to the angry princess's cube slide open. She advances on him, the knife she used to end her life clutched in her hand. Ben attempts a terrible apology, shakily chuckling while backing away from her. He's trying to joke his way out of getting killed by a ghost. Quick as a flash, the walls in the house move again, but this time Ben is standing in the worst possible spot. Two pieces of glass moving together to form a new wall slice Ben in half. I think he got off a little too easy for obvious reasons, but hey, at least he's dead. Arthur is ready to listen to Dennis when they see the walls begin to move. Dennis removes his power guy coveralls to show a black suit with a red button down with black embroidery on it, and scholars, it's a look. The suit needs to be tailored better, but if it was, this would be glorious. Arthur and Dennis go back to the room Arthur left his children, Maggie, and to see it empty. He and Dennis split up to find everyone. Arthur takes the upstairs and assigns Dennis the downstairs to look. Kathy is up in the bathroom looking at herself in the mirror. The viewer gets treated to flashes between what Kathy sees and what it is like looking through a pair of ghost glasses. Through the glasses, the bathroom is covered in blood, and the angry princess stands behind Kathy, watching her as she looks at herself in the mirror. Kathy eventually turns to the bathtub. When she opens the curtain, the angry princess is sitting in the tub with bloody water. Kathy doesn't see her. She starts to run the water and splash it on her face, which, why? She isn't even washing her face or anything, she's just splashing it with water. I don't get it. Eventually, the water turns to blood, and the angry princess slowly goes towards Kathy, knife raised. Before Kathy gets stabbed or bloody-faced, Arthur barges in the room. Bobby, still wearing the glasses, continues to scooter around the house, having outridden Maggie. He eventually comes to the top of the stairs to the basement. He hears a voice calling for him. He follows it, thinking it's Kathy or Maggie. Another voice tells him not to listen, to not go downstairs and leave instead. Bobby hesitates briefly before continuing into the basement. He explores the area for a while before he stops. The voice that had urged him not to go downstairs tells him not to turn around. So what do you think he does? He turns around because this kid does not listen to a single goddamn thing he's told unless it already aligns with something he wanted to do. Well, joke's on you, kid. The bound woman, a tied-up woman in a prom dress, is there to scare the bejesus out of you. Bobby screams and scooters away, but eventually falls. He encounters the torso, self-explanatory, and his severed head next. He runs away calling for Arthur before he collides with a wall. He falls to the floor, glasses flying off his head. Arthur questions Kathy on Bobby's whereabouts, and she tells him that Bobby's with Maggie. Maggie comes from behind and sheepishly corrects them. She gives excuses to Arthur about them racing and the glass causing the issue. Arthur angrily storms out the bathroom while also reminding Maggie that he pays her to do a job which she didn't fucking do. Maggie is an awful nanny. She should not be taking care of children. The three head to the area where they entered the house, Arthur insisting Maggie and Kathy wait outside. They soon realize that this would not be possible, however, as the door is now gone, replaced by sealed glass. Arthur takes a chair and tries to break the glass, but it's too strong and the chair breaks instead. Dennis, from the corner, lets the group know they're trapped. Arthur forces Dennis to come with them as they search for Bobby. While searching, Dennis tries to explain to them the reality of their situation, that the glass used in Cyrus's house was made to hold up to ghosts and is soundproof, which will make finding Bobby much harder. The Latin etchings on all the walls are containment spells for the ghosts. He tells them how the entire basement is full of ghosts. They roll their eyes at him and dismiss him. Dennis responds back angrily and pulls out a pair of glasses as a way of proving himself right. Maggie notes that Bobby has a pair of those glasses. Dennis hands his pair to her to look through. Maggie notices there are etchings on the floor as well. Dennis takes the glasses and sees that there are protection spells on the floors and ponders why. Arthur angrily tells Dennis to stop talking about ghosts and help find Bobby. Arthur heads down to the basement and Dennis runs to stop him. He angrily yells at Arthur with a line that always gets me. Did I say there was a petting zoo downstairs? No, there are ghosts downstairs, Arthur. Dennis is over it. He just wanted to get paid, and now he's stuck in this glass box with a gaggle of idiots and a bunch of ghosts. Arthur is dismissive of Dennis again, but acknowledges he needs help. So how does he ask Dennis for help? By telling him that he would be paid the money Cyrus owed him. Please remember that Dennis and Cyrus have a contract, and had they all escaped, Dennis all the way could have taken Arthur to court over the lack of payment, as the debt could be charged to the estate. Dennis has proper legal recourse. It doesn't matter that the contract was for ghost hunting and the idea is ludicrous. Any sensible attorney would have to show that the terms and agreement of the contract mention that Cyrus's death was a direct result of the job they both worked, which gives credibility to Dennis's case, and prove how Dennis upheld his end of the agreement, but Cyrus didn't uphold his because of dying a little bit. With the right attorney, Dennis could have definitely gotten the money he was owed, and so shitty that Arthur knew that Dennis wouldn't turn down his offer. Because who wants to deal with having to go through the courts or attorneys? Arthur's a prick for this. Dennis, of course, agrees to help search for Bobby. That's where we're going to end it today, scholars. Tune in next week for How Mental Illness Impacts Human Reaction to Fear, Part 2. Until then, stay scary.